Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Hey guys, every Wednesday, I'm going to be hosting a live online event sharing my biggest lessons in an action-packed presentation designed to help you go from where you are now to where you want to be. I'm helping men break through their biggest limiting beliefs to create the life they want. Plus, after the presentation, I'm going to do an open Q&A where I answer all of your questions. To register for my next event, go to kfmlive.com. Again, that's kfmlive.com. Register now before the event fills up. Hope to see you there. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Stephen McGhee, a leadership coach and author of Get Real, Climb to Freedom, and Learning to Believe the Unbelievable. This is actually Stephen's second time on the show, so happy to have him back. Stephen, how are you doing today?
I'm happy to be here with you, buddy. It's good to be back on your show. I'm sure a lot has transpired in both your life and mine, and looking forward to taking a deeper dive this time around. Yeah. This sounds good. And I was sharing with you earlier, my voice, for all the listeners, you're wondering, I sound different, still recovering from the live event that I did just last week or so with 60 guys here in San Diego. So without further ado, let's dive in with, I'd like to start off with a success quote or some sort of saying that maybe you've lived by that's helped you through your journey. Share with us what you got. You bet. I've got one that can change the context of my day any given day. And it's one I've lived by off and on for 20 years. And it's by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. If you can say that one, it's a French, French dude. And it's kind of a popular quote, but one that you and I can ground as we go through the show. But it's this: we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Wow. And so what does that mean to you? And then what did you mean by this will help me get through any time, any part of the day? Well, I think so many of us, entrepreneurs, businessmen, husbands, whatever we're up to in life, we can tend to start looking at our lives like we're human beings having this spiritual experience. And that can get kind of challenging because it's like, well, I'm human and I'm having this experience, but what if you could see through the lens that you're actually a spiritual being having a human experience? And that from that context, that everything you're doing, everything that's happening in your life can be used for your learning. So suddenly mistakes look differently. So suddenly failures look differently. So suddenly the dark side of my day or the dark side of my experience looks differently because now it's a learning experience as opposed to some human experience that I can't handle. Yeah, I like that. Even if we're thinking of some unfortunate circumstance like pain, physical pain, or some sort of health challenge or something like that, when you really put it in this context and we start looking for the gifts, we're really starting to flip the script on ourselves. So well said. And I'm glad you pivoted immediately to like physical pain. I have a buddy right now who a few years ago was a national cyclocross champion, top of his game, top of his business. He's now unfortunately dealing with a really challenging, painful health opportunity. And, when he sees it through the lens of a spiritual experience, it makes sense. When he sees it through the lens of this shouldn't be happening to me, I was healthy, my body was working better than this. He moves into victim, he moves into fear, and suddenly it's bigger than he is. When he's looking at it through the lens of it being a spiritual being having a human experience, he's bigger than the problem. He's bigger than the pain. And I that's why I love that quote so much. Yeah, I like that too. You bring up a good point here and I think this is relative to your coaching, when someone's at the top of their game. And so this could be professionally, business, career, could even be athletics. Someone's at the top of their game and then they lose it. Where if we use an athlete, for example, where
I'm thinking of one of my members at my live events where he was, I think he was like an amateur hockey player at the top of his game, and he like didn't make the cut into the NHL. And it's like something you dedicated 15, 20 years of your life in, like the dream is over. And I'm sure you've experienced some of this with some of your coaching or some of the people in your network, but I find that this is like this weird transition for a guy, or even think of these UFC fighters. I'm thinking of BJ Penn, who was my favorite UFC fighter, who was at the top of his game.
Right.
And then they end up coming back, kind of like Michael Jordan. He quit and then he came back with the Wizards. I'm even thinking Kobe Bryant might come back after a few years. It's like, yeah, maybe if we can shed some light on this, someone who's at the top of their game and then they lose it. And then what happens in that state of confusion?
Yeah, well, again, great question. Something really good to look at. I think that, I've always looked at my life as a long-term success. I'm older than some or maybe even most of your listeners. So there have been times in my life where I thought I was going to be doing this one thing for the rest of my life. And when I look back on my life, I see that those were all things that led me to the next level of success if I use it for my advancement. Now, let's say that I think I used to be an investment banker. Part of my story.
Right,
I was actually on the succession plan for CEO of Nations Bank at one time in my late 20s, and I thought I was going to be CEO of a bank. I never stuck with that. I never made it to that for reasons that I won't go into now, but it was just it did not align for me to go in that direction long term. So I can take that as a failure.
Right.
Or I can look at it as an experience that deepens me as a leader, that deepens me as a man, and I can move forward. And yes, to your point, many of my clients have had those same experiences. And that's sometimes why people come to work with guys like you and I, where they say, hey, man, I just went through a divorce, or I just went through a bankruptcy, or I have this health challenge. It doesn't mean it's the end of things. It can be the beginning of greatness.
Yes. Yes, I like that. That's really, I know there's so many guys who just took that nugget and it gave them like just like a sigh, like they could breathe again. Because there's that state of confusion can cause, like we can stay in that for so long, but it's really our perspective of what we give that challenge. And I think really it's almost like a conscious shift that we can make and use it as fuel to create something new. It's really, I'm thinking of that Steve Jobs quote, how we really can't connect the dots looking forward. We can only do that looking backward.
Yeah. And I think you're right about how, so many of us, we judge it as wrong. Like this shit shouldn't be happening to me. And that, I understand that. Like I have compassion for that. I've worked with a lot of people that have that as a, the way they see things. But, that's the first thing to do, is to stop judging what's going on and start to use it as a way to build yourself moving forward. And we become stronger from that. We become more powerful. And I mean more powerful in a loving, vulnerable way where we can seriously kick ass moving forward from those things, as opposed to having those things break us.
Yeah. I had interviewed and had a guest speaker at one of my events previously named Sam Morris, and he was at the top of his game athletically, and skiing and running marathons and very active in life, and was in a car accident. He lost all function below his waist. And when he was speaking, the question that you would obviously ask yourself is, why me? And live in that for a while. But then he was able to flip the script and start asking himself, well, why not me?
Yeah.
And that's a
question.
Powerful way to look at that. Now, coming into what you've been up to, more focusing on what is, I think it's been over a year since we've had you've been on the show. Like, what has been going on in your life in the last year or so? I'm curious to just dive into some of that stuff. What's really getting you out of bed in the morning?
Well, just last week, I signed an agreement to do a film. We won't really begin filming until 2017. It's called The Millionaire Mind. It's going to be produced by some of the same people that did What's the Bleep? And there's the likes of Jack Canfield and Mark Thompson. I believe Marshall Goldsmith, who's one of the top leadership coaches in the world, are going to be a part of the movie. And our goal and objective is to take entrepreneurs from where they are and double their business in short order through mentoring and coaching relationships. So I had the first coaching mentoring conversation with my entrepreneur today. And so we got the metrics set. And I'm really excited about that because, as you know, and any of your listeners know, coaching and a conversation, when two people come together and they start to create things, it's like what happens in that synergy is you can often shift the trajectory of things so powerfully that things start to happen in a more exponential way, like a multiplier effect is what I like to call it. So that's new. That's exciting. Can't wait for that.
Yeah, that sounds really, that sounds like an amazing project. I don't know if there's anything you could have said that would have really thrown me back to other than what you just shared. Was that something that you were striving to go for? Was this a goal? Like you were making calls, you were working for it? Or was this something that came to you more of like, you're just doing your thing and it's like law of attraction type of thinking here?
Yeah, I would say it's more in that area, Andrew, because, you know, I, like you, I mean, I'm a worker. I don't work the number of hours I used to work because I'm working a lot smarter than I used to. I'm strategizing more and leveraging, and I'm also really open. I'm highly spiritual, so I listen, I meditate every day. I get attuned to what's the most important thing I can do today. But this just came to me like so many things do. My clients come to me that way. So no, I'm not on the phone cold calling people doing that kind of thing.
Raising money on Kickstarter and all this.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, more power to them. I know that there's a time and a place for that, but then there's also this like find your rhythm, find your grace, you know, and that doesn't mean we don't work our butts off. I'm going to apply myself like crazy on this project, but it did come to me through a network of people that knew of my work. And you know, I'm not out there like Marshall Goldsmith on that level, but I'm doing good work. And when we do that, when any of us do that, when we get results and we apply ourselves, those things show up.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you start surrounding yourself with such high level people? What are you doing that allows some of these people to come into your life?
I gotta back up a few years before I answer because I remember a time, and maybe you can relate, maybe you can't, but some of you out there listening can understand this. Like I went to Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado for my undergrad. And I used to joke, I used to say, hey, if you could put fog on a mirror, you could get into Fort Lewis. And it was true. I mean, you did not have to be smart. I didn't have any money. It was like 3,500 students, and it was a ski and a party school, which was fantastic. But anyway, long story short, I didn't have a lot of confidence. And I remember when I came out into banking, there were people I was literally afraid to talk to. Like somehow I wouldn't measure up to a conversation with a high level person that had a degree from Harvard or Stanford, you know, or whatever it was that I was nervous about. Like I didn't measure up. And over time, what I found is that when I was just open and I took the step and I was willing to learn and I was willing to be wrong and I didn't let my ego get too involved, these people just want to help. These people just want to watch. They want to succeed, but they also want you to succeed. They love success. So that's how I sort of, long story short, started to talk with some of these people that were highly exposed, that were big influential leaders. And what's so freaking funny about it now is those are the people I'm coaching. And I pinch myself sometimes like, really? I left a board meeting recently where I was facilitating a strategic initiative between the CEO and the board. And most of the players on that board were from those schools. They were from some of the best Ivies. Schools in the world, the Ivy League. And so anyway, leadership is about asking questions, and I've gotten really good at that, and that helps a lot. Like you don't have to know it all the time. In fact, you don't have to know it all most of the time. You just have to be willing to ask.
Yeah. I find that when I was working as a retail manager, I found it very difficult to connect with the people that I wanted to connect with. But when I quit my job and I wasn't making any money at the time, but when I quit my job and started blogging about this stuff, Knowledge for Men, it was like these people started almost coming into my life because they were in a way like attracted to, just looking back, like attracted to just the fact that I was doing something in alignment with who I was. There's something there where they just started coming to me, like people that I was searching out for when I had the job. It wasn't like they wanted to give me their time. And now when I'm doing this, it's like, it's interesting because I'm thinking right now of two people that I was trying so hard to connect with when I was in that phase with the job, and nothing wrong with having a job, it's just where I was. And these two people were the people who, when I was putting on this event, were emailing me trying to speak at my event. And it's like just funny how that works. Now it's like we're working together, we travel together. They're even actually two of them are my clients, and just kind of that relative when you step into like your role or something that's you're really passionate or you feel like you're in alignment with your purpose. I feel like the right people, you're more attractive. There's something there. I almost don't want to say law of attraction, but I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I think I really like that. I think that there's the language I use, which can sometimes be misunderstood, is there's a surrender. So you got to relax. I don't mean people hear surrender, they think that means give up. It's not give up. I'm relaxed. I'm not attached. And, I'm still moving forward, taking the action steps that are required. And it doesn't always end up as a direct relationship with that person. But sometimes just taking the steps, it puts something into motion. I say spirit meets us at the point of action. So it's like the inspiration, the enthusiasm, come forward from that step. And sometimes it comes in a different way, and that's really cool because usually that lines up better for me anyway. It's like the thing I thought I wanted isn't necessarily the thing, but it was moving in that direction that brought me to the success or the result that I want.
Yeah. Really good. Really good. Now, in your coaching practice here, you work with very high level people. Even just looking at the testimonials on your website, these are some big names here, or they're coming from, large executive leadership positions from, 150 companies. I'm wondering, like, what is your relationship with money? Because I don't know your rates or pricing, but I assume just based on the industry that they are going to be higher. It's not going to be a low cost experience. It's going to be absolutely worth it. But what does it take to be able to charge at a high value? And how do you understand your worth as a leader? Because I think so many of us as leaders, whether we're entrepreneurs or in careers, undervalue ourselves. So I'm just curious, like, what does your relationship with money look like?
It's a relationship that has evolved over time.
Right.
I mean,
I assume, yeah.
Yeah, like some of your listeners, I came really from nothing. Single parent, 4 kids. My mother pretty much reared us on her own. And so the relationship I have with money has grown. And what's happened with it is that over time, I started to realize that it wasn't about trading time for dollars. And I think this is a big mistake people make in a lot of areas. As a leader, for sure. Like when you think about all the work you've done, Andrew, all the books you've read, when you're in front of another human being that maybe hasn't done all that work yet, you can take 5 years, 10 years, in my case, over 25 years of integration of leadership concept and nail it in a moment that might save that person 2 years, or it might save that person even 20 years if they're heading down the wrong path. So what I started to see over time through my work was where an individual made a decision in their business because of a conversation we had, and they add $50 million to the bottom line. Or maybe they're thinking about getting a divorce because they're being narcissistic in their marriage. And we have a really fierce conversation that says, dude, you love this woman, you want to be with this woman, then you can make this work. But here's who you're going to have to be. So then that person doesn't get a divorce. They end up having a happy married life. Because of that, they do better in their work and they don't go through the expense and the high cost of what can happen in some divorces. And so suddenly it's like, wow, what's this worth? So that's the first part of it, is my just seeing over time, and I'm sure you see it too, happens in a conversation can have huge impact. So Andrew, the second point about money and the value and the worth that we have as leaders is that on the other side of it, what I've found is when a person is making that big commitment, then something magical happens. So it's not just about my receiving of a bigger fee. It's about what happens in the synergy in that relationship. It's like we all play our A game all the time. So I've just learned that over the years. And that doesn't mean I don't do service projects. I do some pro bono projects, et cetera. But when I'm working with someone that wants a legacy of leadership and they want profound results on the bottom line, it's like we got to play a big enough game to warrant that fee with an as I mentioned earlier, with a multiplier effect, so that at the end of the year, that my clients, it's a no-brainer to say, hey, let's do this for another year. So it has a lot to do with the size of game we're playing as well. And it's somewhat of a process, but I also want to say that money doesn't have to be a big, long process. That each of us as men can claim inside of ourselves who we are. And as we do that, then that reflection of I call it the mirror of money as a consciousness. It's like it's going to reflect back to us our own self-worth, so that if we don't claim it inwardly, we can never get it outwardly, which is the relationship, as you know, about leadership. Leadership's always going to be an intrinsic journey that offers an extrinsic reward. And in this case, we're talking about money, although it shows up in many other ways. Can you hear that, Andrew? Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And you're coming in clean. And this relationship around money, I think really coming to terms with it and understanding the transformational benefit beyond the call. That'd be like the title of a good book, Beyond the Call.
I like it. Why not?
Yeah. And because when you were talking about the example of the gentleman going through a divorce and like what that would save him and his marriage, his children, and you can't put a value. You can't even put a price tag on something like that. Or helping someone, he pays you, I don't know, $25,000 and then he goes on in his business and makes another $50 million. It's like, maybe you were being underpaid in that situation. But yeah, this idea of money and the challenge and to understand your true worth. I'm curious, like, do you have a budget for your own personal development? Like, do you as a coach have a coach? Do you actively pursue other type of events, or what does your own personal development look like to you?
Well, my primary function in life is, or at least one of the top primary functions, is learning and growth. So I learned early on, and especially given my background, it was like the curse turned into a blessing. You know what I mean, Andrew? It was like I didn't feel that confident. I didn't have that much self-esteem. So I was like, I started learning about myself. And so I don't have a budget each year that I go, I'm going to spend X amount on it. But I will tell you that over the years, I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on personal growth and development. I'm in my second master's degree program now. I've spent as much as $150,000 a year on one coach, and that required my traveling twice a month to go see him. And I paid that fee, in advance and for the year. And I'll tell you that I made it worth it exponentially, like 10 times came back to me that year from what I spent on my growth and development. So I just, number one, it's about the money, but it's not about the money. It's about what am I going to learn here? And that I'm constantly learning, that I'm constantly, I wouldn't say I'm constantly reading anymore because I've read so much, but I'm in conversations with people where I'm always looking at what's the gem, what's the nugget. And I think that's what makes us better leaders. That's what has us, the willingness to have someone reflect back to you, to me, where our growth is and continually course correct. And it gets integrated over time and you become very clear about what you want and how you can get it.
Wow. I mean, just that number would, I think, seem staggering for a lot of the listeners, $150,000, not including your travel and all the time involved associated with one coach. That's correct? One coach, or is this like a program?
No, that's accurate. That is absolutely accurate.
Yeah. And that's a barrier. That is a massive barrier, I think, for a lot of people to understand that value. But when you're playing at that level, I think the results absolutely will follow that type of coaching. So in your experience of being coached and then also turning around and serving others as a coach, what does it take to, how do you take someone who is a good leader and put him into a place where he can become a great leader?
Well, all greatness is going to come from expansion. It's going to come from an individual getting outside of what's comfortable for them. So let's pivot back to the fee for a second. That was uncomfortable for me. I mean, I was making good money at the time, but I mean, that took my breath away. And you have to, as a leader, be willing to jump in the cold plunge, man, and breathe through it. And if I don't do that, if you as a listener are not stretching and growing, you're just not going to get to that next level. And then suddenly we fall in love with our edges. We fall in love with being what used to be uncomfortable now becomes more comfortable, but it's still an edge. It's like it becomes part of the juicy nature of our lives as men. And I think that's a real key for any leader. And it doesn't end. You know, even guys that'll come to see me in their mid-60s, you know, it's like, what do you want to do for the next 30 years? What are you going to create? You know, you're in the third quarter of your life. What do you want moving forward? What are you going to do? And so these are all elements that are highly important.
Yeah, I read this book often, and it's by Osho. It's called Courage, the Joy of Living Dangerously. And yeah. And so he has this quote, and it's just very simple. It says, life begins where fear ends.
Yeah.
And I like a couple of things you said here about your edge, like falling in love with your edge. Because what this book talks about is saying, he calls it a different word, but the edge, same thing. I get it. It's you become alive when you're living in your edge. Like you come alive, and that's what the book is about. It's like you come alive when you go into a little bit of danger, when you're taking risk. And it talks about how most people, unfortunately, are living within their comfort zone, therefore unalive.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm a practitioner of yoga for over 25 years, and I came from a background of competitive athletics and, you know, wrestling and football and triathlons and pushing my body and all that. And I got to a place where I'm like, wow, I need to do some rehabilitation of my body. And so I got into yoga, but I found that there was an edge even there, that there's an edge in holding a posture and then finding the calm in the edge. So that's, I bring that up whether you practice yoga or not. You know, it's like that's what being a leader is all about, because you can't be frenetic as a leader and expect to get results, because leadership is all about who are you being in a moment. And that can shift, by the way, in a nanosecond. So I don't believe in big, long processes with my clients or people in general. It's like, hey, knock it off, move into who you're going to be and practice that with consistency. And then what happens is integration. And then what happens is that's just who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Just really cutting through right there, breaking through the excuse, breaking through the story, and leaning into who you want to be. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this has been a powerful session here, and I want to take it into the knowledge round. Just going to ask you a few more rapid fire questions here. So, Steven, are you ready for the knowledge round?
Yeah.
Guys, after 200 plus interviews, traveling the world, attending dozens of personal growth events, I finally cracked the code on how to unleash the man within. This Wednesday, I'll be sharing my biggest insights on creating the life you want, and I'm doing an open QA with all of you. I'm doing this live event because it gives me a place to connect with the Knowledge for Men community directly versus listening to me. Now you get to interact with me. Register for the next event by going to kfmlive.com. Last week's event was a massive success, so don't miss out. There's limited space available. Again, register for the next event by going to kfmlive.com. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. All right. So, Steven, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling really lost and unsure of their direction right now?
Well, it's going to sound weird what I'm going to say, but the first thing is accept where you are. In my book, Get Real, I write about this. It's like the sooner you get hip with your reality, the reality of where you are, the sooner you can succeed. So look at your situation and look at it real, but don't judge it. See, most people spiral down into the story of I suck, I'm a failure, I'm never going to climb out of it. That's bullshit, and it's a belief system. So you can start to just get hip with where you are and start to move yourself back to where you want to be by using this situation for your growth. That's what we've been talking about, in essence, this entire show, or at least a part of the show, is use the problem for the solution. Get bigger than the problem so you can see the solution. Accept where you are. Own it. I got myself here. You go, well, no, I got fired. You still got yourself there. Well, I got divorced. You still got yourself there. So own it 100%. Don't let yourself be a victim no matter what it is. If you're hooked on drugs or alcohol or sex addiction, you got yourself there. Own it, accept it, and then go get the solution. Go find help and find people that will hold you accountable to who you want to be. And that doesn't mean you have to spend 150 grand on a great coach. You can find brothers around you through the groups like you just did, or people that are close to you that will hold you accountable. If you'll tell them what you want, they will do it.
Yeah, Stephen, you're on a roll here.
It's a great question.
Yeah, it is. And I think that sparked something in there inside of you. And that was, it's like we can live in those stories. You know, we tell ourselves the story and we can live in that story for years, decades. But what I'm getting from you is we get to decide how long, and we can cut it and start moving slowly towards where we want to go.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. And Stephen, what was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
Oh, man. What was holding me back was fear of not being good enough, or fear that, you know, I always liked looking really good, Andrew. So I always tried to do things that I knew I would end up succeeding at. I tried to do things that I knew that I would end up looking good at. So I didn't play as big a game. And then I started getting bored with that. And I started realizing there was more. And I started realizing, you know, you kind of have a problem in a way if you're a person that's succeeding 90% of the time. So I'd say what happened for me is I said, I don't want to succeed 90% of the time. I want to succeed 50, 60% of the time in a lot bigger game. So you can make that mean what you want to make it mean as you listen to this, but everyone out there, I don't care who we are, even the most successful of your guests on your show, there's a new edge for them too. We all have a new edge, and that's what life is. So I would say opening myself up to a bigger game and letting go of what success looked like so that I could keep learning, so that I could play a bigger game and grow from it.
Wow. Yeah, just putting all this in right here. I like how you just kind of called out, you know, even your guests have big edges. Because we look up to them. They're on the show. They have these big attributes. They've, you know, very successful people. So some of them have sold companies for over $1 billion, been on this show. And even that individual has an edge.
Yeah. And so let's look at that, you know, so those are some of the guys that sometimes I'll get in conversations with. And when those guys are honest, you know, we could say, hey, they crushed it on the goal line, but have they crushed it on the soul line? You know, are they fulfilled with $3.2 billion? And a lot of times what they're telling me is, man, I thought I'd be happy now. And I go, well, it's time to do some soul line work. And the people that have only done soul line work, I'm like, dude, you got to apply this on the goal line and get your IRA together, get your SEP together, get your pay for performance plan down so that you're crushing it on the goal line and you're making more money and taking care of yourself and your family. So goal line, soul line integration is huge, but we all got an edge, whether it's on the goal line or the soul line or both the goal line and the soul line.
And have you met someone who, I would think it would be very hard to find someone who has both?
I think those are rare individuals, but I call them soul-centered leaders. And
okay.
Doing a talk at Sun Valley Wellness in Sun Valley. It's in May, at the end of May. I'm going to do a keynote on soul-centered leadership. And I think that's the new model for leadership. You know, the old model of leadership is bankrupt. And those are individuals, the ones you're talking about, that have a beautiful integration between both the soul line and the goal line.
Yeah, thanks for bringing an awareness around this topic here. That's really great. And I think even for those who feel like they've got the goal line down and they're feeling that kind of emptiness, I think just being aware of the soul line, it's like, oh, like this is this other area that I should work on. Like maybe I should start focusing on this. I think that's really important just right there. It's what I'm getting. You mentioned you're not really so much lately, at least, reading a ton of books, but what would you say have been 2 or 3 very influential books that have helped you on your journey?
Yeah, one is I just finished it. It's actually along the lines of this topic we've been talking about with Soul Line and Goal Line. It's right, Robert Holden. It's called Authentic Success, and
Okay.
he gets into, not just success on the goal line, but really finding success as an alignment to who you are as a man. I love Robert Holden. I know him. I've met him, and he's a great guy. And he's speaking from experience. Then on another different note, a buddy of mine that lives in Los Angeles who's starting a great new company referred me to the book Bold by Peter Diamandis.
Yeah.
Have you had that on your show or heard of it? It's
Stephen Kotler, yeah, I've had.
Yeah, so Stephen Kotler. So then I just love that whole idea of disruption and how to go big, create wealth, and impact the world through being bold. So I'm about 3/4 of the way through that book, Andrew, and I'm totally digging that book.
Yeah, really good books there, and just added the Holden book on the. I'm on my computer right here. Just got it. Whatever other book I can get. I just love books. It's like candy to me.
Yeah, good.
So this next one's more of a scenario here, and so imagine you had 60 seconds with your 25-year-old self. What would you tell 25-year-old Steven to do if you could think about where he was personally, professionally, financially, all this? What would you tell him to do? What would you tell him not to do?
I would tell him to be who he is and not try to pretend to be anybody other than who I was as an authentic self. That's where the juice is. That's where the grace is. That's where the alignment is. That's where the true leadership is. When I was 25, I was pretty busy keeping up an identity. Not only how I looked, but what I said, who I hung with. I did things that I didn't really want to be doing because I thought it was the right thing to be doing because then I would somehow look a certain way. At 25, I would drop all that. I would say that's just a waste of my time and energy, and I would have spent more time with the people that I truly enjoyed being with. Life is short. I always say life is a vapor. Happens fast. I'm 54 now, believe it or not. I feel like I'm 25, Andrew. Thank God to my workouts and my nutrition. But
Right.
Man, I'm not. I'm 54, so I'm in the second half. But anyway, that's what I would say to my 25-year-old self or anyone listening that's in that age. Just frickin' go for it. Be yourself. You got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And some people are going to like that, and some people are going to be terrified of that. The tendency is at times, what was it Marianne Williamson said? Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure.
Yeah.
And when you're being yourself fully, you are a powerhouse. And I don't mean forceful. I mean powerful. And when you're powerful in that way, it's going to threaten people that haven't found that power. So pardon my language, but fuck it. Be yourself and embrace who you are.
Yeah.
And go for it. Yeah.
I like the occasional when a guy who doesn't use curse and then he does it to emphasize a point. It's like, versus some guys who just cuss all the time. It's like it loses credibility.
I heard one of those podcasts earlier this week. The guy was every other word, and I was like, anyway, I don't use it that often, but
when you do, it hit me. I felt a little strike in my heart. I'm like, oh, Steven just cursed. It must be good. All right. So this is the last question here. And in the last episode, I asked you like your philosophy on life and success, and that you absolutely blew it away there. But you did bring up a good point here with the soul-centered leader. So I'm interested in diving into what is the philosophy of a soul-centered leader.
Well, the philosophy of a soul-centered leader is some of what we've talked about, which is constant, never-ending improvement. I've heard you talk about that on your show. A soul-centered leader is going to use everything to his or her advancement, no matter what it is. No matter if it's a health opportunity or a financial crisis, they're going to use whatever's going around for their advancement. This is a person that is utilizing the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual attributes of who they are. In other words, I think it'd be hard to be a soul-centered leader if I was just living in my head all the time as a mental construct. Like if all I was doing was like linear progression with my mind. Like I'm not knocking that. I mean, I use my mind. I have a pretty good intellect, but there's also intelligence, which comes from wisdom. So a soul-centered leader is going to tap into his or her wisdom and they're going to learn to trust it, which is sometimes looks funny. It's like, what? I'm going to do what? I'm going to move from where to where? You hear this wisdom, and there's times when you're walking, it's a feeling of like you're walking in outer space, like it's not grounded. It doesn't make sense, but you trust it anyway. That's who a soul-centered leader is. And this is the future of leadership, in my view, in my opinion, not only in business, but I hope in other areas of our country and in the world as a global economy. We need it. That's how big problems are going to get solved, because it won't make sense. Do you know what I mean by that? It's just some of it's not going to make sense. Like, we need to do what? To shift the direction of this company? That sounds pretty rash. But sometimes it's bold and it disrupts things, as pointed out in the book I mentioned.
And Stephen, that sounds like a great book, The Soul-Centered Leader.
Yeah.
That's going to conclude the knowledge round there. Very powerful, a lot of epiphanies and life lessons really just thrown into just a 10-minute conversation in that last piece there. So now I'm curious, what is the rest of the year? What's really moving you? What are you looking forward to in this new year?
I'm going to keep doing my one-on-one work at a high level. I don't know if I'm going to do another big Aconcagua Man project this year. I'm finishing up a second master's degree in consciousness, health, and healing, which to me is leadership. I'm going to start to prep for this movie in 2017. I've got a number of keynotes like the one I mentioned in May. And that's pretty much my year. You know, I'm stoked about it. I'm taking what I do and I'm going deeper with it rather than broadening what I'm doing, which is just feels right to me this year. And who knows what'll come from that, but that's the direction I'm heading.
Yeah. I'm excited for what you're doing, what you're creating, and I want to try and see one of these talks you got going on. Stephen, this has been a very powerful episode. This whole entire, this has been really good. I know my audience has taken away so much from this. So I see that you have updated the website, which is awesome. I haven't seen it in a while, but it's McGheeleadership.com, and that's MCGHEE leadership.com. You can actually just Google Stephen McGhee into Google, and it's with a PH, the Stephen, and it pops right up. But anything else? You also got the books on Amazon, Get Real, Climb to Freedom, and Learning to Believe the Unbelievable. Is there anything else you'd like to plug inside here?
Yeah, I want to plug you for the work you're doing. I mean, I have enjoyed what you're up to. I've enjoyed your own personal progression. We talked a little bit about the 3-day that you just completed. I think it's awesome. Way to go. I mean, way to live into your dreams. If there's some way I can make Get Real a vital breakthrough on your life and leadership available to your listeners, I'm happy to do that. I've got it in an ebook format. If there's a way to set up a link in some way so your listeners can read that, I'm happy to contribute it.
Oh, great. Yeah. So for the guys, I'll just put it in the blog post on the website, and it'll be in the blog post in addition to this episode here. So the guys can easily just go to knowledgeformen.com and scroll down, and you should find the Stephen McGhee episode right there.
Awesome. Great.
All right, Stephen, thank you so much for your time and just really delivering and being fully present here with me. It's been invaluable.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks for the time again, and I'm sure we'll cross paths soon.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and millions of downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we're just getting started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a helpful review in iTunes, because it really helps the podcast grow so we can impact even more men in the world who need this. Guys, this is all about living with purpose, where every day you only do things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. And always remember, love the life you have while creating the life of your dreams. Go to kfmfree.com to get a surprise bonus I've made for my listeners. Again, that's kfmfree.com for something that's changed my life, and I'm offering it to you for free. Also, check out my Amazon best-selling books that I've written for you to help you crush life at kfmauthor.com. Again, that's kfmauthor.com to see all the books I've created to help you break through in life. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, founder of knowledgeformen.com, and I'll see you in the next episode.